So today I wanted to talk about Brian Weaver. Now, I spoke about Brian Longbotham, which came in my life a lot later, towards the end of college, and the connections between Brian Longbotham with many other people doing the same exact things of beyond any level of extremely rare known to man, with mass groups of people working with them, also known as a conspiracy to remove me from society. And today I want to talk about Brian Weaver, who I met around 7th or 8th grade, and showing you that these aren't isolated incidences. It just keeps happening from one person sequentially after the next since 5 years old. And also, before I start in with Brian Weaver, there was one thing I spoke the other day in my last segment about the knife. The knife incident with my brother, which me harmlessly scaring him off me turns into the largest crime known to man in the history of the world, where absolutely nothing happened, but a thugging, bullying brother didn't get his way. And as I explained before, oddly enough, because he didn't get his way, or more importantly, because something freaky was going on to begin with, their endless tirade of worldwide murder operations to rid me of the world for the information I know, showing that obviously if you've lived your life for X amount of years, or whatever, 30 years after the fact of this harmless event, and it is so important that you don't speak about it, obviously something highly illegal was going on by the government with the psychology community, and set up operations to try to set me up and get reactions to use against me to remove me from society, like I have shown this pattern of behavior all day and night, 24/7, over and over, from stranger after stranger, my entire life, with clear motives and agendas, premeditation, motive, agenda, to remove me from society. So as I spoke about the steak knife incident, there was one of the things I forgot to mention, and there's probably hundreds of things just like this with the steak knife alone, but after 29 years old, finding out something was very wrong with my life, met with the police, or Mike Huntley, threatening my life, basically, that I'm being watched, they're making me mentally ill to control me, which I've never heard of anything like that, also known as attempted murder, and I better live a careful life. They're using the system against me, with is basically, to sum it all up, death threats with the police, LAPD, government, that they're watching me. I better not do what they say or they'll kill me, right? And doing what they say is on the macro level of, if you put salt on your food, we're going to kill you. Meaning, what is it really about? Well, it's just about killing you and trying to make you think that it's okay that they kill you. But after that conversation and finding out Rody Morales was working for the LAPD, trying to get murder confessions, which I didn't really know at that point, he was sent after me by Mike Huntley and the LAPD to rid me of the world and have me killed. After the age 29, so sometime around, who knows, 20, let's just say 29 to 32, in my dazed and confused, I'm watching a worldwide campaign to kill me, but I can't comprehend what the hell's going on. I go up to Topanga Canyon, top of Topanga, which is like a little canyony. It's a canyon road to the beach, and up there is an overlook of all of the valley where everyone goes. It's like a turn off with a little some parking spaces and a bench meant for people to kind of go up there, relax, and look at the view. And while there is a curfew, which is rarely enforced because I've been up there countless times with tons of people up there late at night, and it's rare that I see a police officer saying everyone needs to go home. I go there around 6 or 7 p.m. It's not dark yet. I'm up there. A police officer makes it his business to stop by because he knows I'm up there. Now knowing that everything I do is under complete NSA level surveillance. And he says, you have to leave. The park is closed. I go, okay. And then for no reason he says, do you have a knife? And
2 miles, take exit 19A for I-405 South, San Diego Freeway.
Sorry, my GPS. So, if you're not catching my drift of what's going on, if for those few that have a hard time reading between the lines, when you've done nothing wrong, you're just standing at a random location overlooking the valley on a public location, which, yes, does have a curfew, and a police officer comes up there and he says, you can't be here, sort of trying to provoke you or get a reaction, even though, yeah, there is a curfew that they never enforce, just like jaywalking, right? And then he asks if you have a knife for absolutely no reason at all, no probable cause, nothing, there's not even anyone else up there. He just asks you if you have a knife, and of course you say no and you go home. It sparks the question of why did he ask about a knife when there's no incident, right? I mean, he's not handcuffing you under probable cause of someone whose life was in danger, and he's asking you if you have weapons or anything. He's asking you because he's hinting about your childhood and not only alluding, but when you become good at reading people, you can understand that what he's doing is he's been given information about Jason and the knife that Jason's so mad about me stopping him, scaring him off me by dropping it to the ground.
In a quarter mile, take exit 19A for I-405 South, San Diego Freeway.
That 30 years later, the cops are questioning me whether I have a knife, as if I did something back then 30 years ago
exit 19A, then keep right at the fork.
At like 8 years old, right? Or maybe that was 10 years old, which bring up all sorts of questions. The first question is, why does this cop have information about a 10-year-old?
Right at the fork.
Right? I mean, that's the first question. Why is everything I do of such importance that this cop, along with every other cop and person on the planet, is walking around saying Kevin Perlman might have a knife? Well, back to my original arguments and everything my website says is about the Constitution of the United States. It's perfectly legal for me to have a knife, a pocket knife, within the guidelines of the law, just like fathers give their kids Swiss Army knives, meaning I'm not doing anything wrong if I have a pocket knife or not, but also then it switches to guns, which obviously the Second Amendment states that you as a citizen have the right to bear arms, right? Hence, my father and the cops hunting me down for the possibility that I might ever have a gun, and my father doing things with the police, like putting bullet holes in his car and saying I tried to kill or scare him, as frame job operations from a family who hates their child's guts and wants it dead and gone. So, these aren't random events. And for my family and the people around me to sit there and go, you're imagining it, and these are just cops asking questions. The cops aren't asking normal questions, and the questions are out of the context of normality and within the context of things being said or information being disseminated about me. So, that being said, if I'm walking around and every person known to man on the planet is he's a violent paranoid schizo and is a danger to himself or others and we need to rid him of the world, well, that all comes back into the confines of groups of people worldwide being disseminated, the information being disseminated, which are lies, known as defamation, slander, libel, civil crimes against me. But in this case, they're really about creating a worldwide lynch mob to have me killed, meaning they're premeditated criminal acts of attempted murder. So, now, if my sanity is in question, then I would think that opens up direct conversations with my family, my friends, therapists, people in the psychology community, instead of saying, we're watching you, we're going to hunt you and kill you, you can't be trusted, you can't see yourself, and you're a dead man, and you do what we say or we kill you, for absolutely no crime known to man ever. And if, like I said before, if I had committed an actual crime, I would be arrested based on facts, evidence, probable cause, and tried in a court of law for that conviction. And still that doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty, but it definitely points more towards the spectrum of they've proven it in a court of law. In my case, as we've seen, courts of laws don't really apply because when I have police contacting mass groups worldwide, telling them to hunt me and kill me, and them all saying, sure, we'll take part, then arresting me with falsified police reports and jury-tampered juries, with lawyers refusing to exercise what the bar states they have to do and defend you no matter how much they're paid. You get the idea that judicial systems don't apply to Kevin Perlin. He is being hunted outside the law and the judicial system since 5 years old. And the fact that I had Officer Toro state, if you ever take a picture of a person, I'll exercise the law in my own way, which Internal Affairs and the government seems to fully support, means that something unprecedented with the psychology community and the judicial system and our government is going on to just hunt down and kill people they don't like or throw psychological labels on, which defeats the entire purpose of the Constitution. So anyways, my point was, though, that 30 years later, a cop is questioning you about a 10-year-old, scaring his thugging, bullying, terrorizing brother off of him, which is terrorizing brother claims that I wouldn't leave him alone, trying to turn around things on me. You get the idea that something freaky is going on and that my brother was actually told to keep provoking me to death, just like all these other people, to get these reactions to use against me, to exterminate me. My family had a child, and after 5 years old, they said, I don't like what we have and we wanted an abortion, and that's it. Okay, so now I can go into Brian Weaver, starting around 8th grade.
Use the right lane to take exit 55 from Wilshire Boulevard.
7th, 8th grade, A.E. Wright Middle School. And there's a lot to say about Brian, I think. I mentioned some of it in my other dialogues. So some of this might be repetitive, but I will try to keep this in a timeline that is, from start to finish, or in, what's the word I'm looking for, in, whatever, sequence by time and date, whatever. Sorry, my brain recall is a little screwed up. I mentioned about Ryan Hirsch in 8th grade. Ryan Hirsch, ironically his last name was Hirsch. Remember that I talked about the AE Wright or T1 class where I kissed the black girl, and my family, with the government, told the world that I'm full of rage and I'm a white supremacist and I hate black people, and I went into that huge long segment about the black community hunting me and stalking me for the last 40 years over simply kissing a black girl, which makes absolutely no sense, stating that they're supposedly all in danger from me because I kissed a black girl. As if that makes any sense. Okay, so, and I'm a white supremacist because of it.
Continue on North Church Lane for half a mile.
Hold on one second. So, with all the paranoid schizophrenia tactics I've been talking about, and I really haven't explained a lot of it on these segments, and I will get into that later, after I sort of create a foundation of all these people told to stalk me for 40 years. I will explain how all the psychological warfare tactics. But for now, you're going to have to bear with me that the smaller amount with the media I've explained and discussed, you can sort of put the pieces together. Obviously, if you're being hunted for kissing a black girl, being labeled a white supremacist, and Brian Weaver is contacted, a friend that you grew up with.
1,000 feet, turn left onto Montana Avenue.
He's contacted and told to take part in this, just like everyone else. He gets together with Ryan Hirsch. Now, they use names like Mike Huntley, hunting me down. They also use Michael Huntley because my middle name is Michael, trying to do their skull fucking to make me think that I'm him because, according to my family, I can't see myself.
Turn left onto Montana Avenue.
Things like that, right? Sending me these cryptic reference messages to try to intentionally create schizophrenia. Hence the name Hirsch Chocolate.
Turn right onto Levering Avenue.
Right, Hirsch being chocolate, Ryan Hirsch. Later on, my father befriending a lawyer, or working with a lawyer, Ryan Golds, to have him and his family try to bully me to death at the age 37 or something, while my father bought a lake house in Victorville, hinting about Victor from 5th grade, I'm not going to get into right now, and also Victoria Walker, him and the police sent after me. Lots of Victors and Victorias. So they bought a lake house in Victorville where Ryan Golds would take turns in anger on me, bullying me, hinting that because I supposedly bullied Ryan Hirsch, which was Brian Weaver, that they're going to get their revenge on me.
Turn right onto Levering Avenue.
30 years later, by complete strangers, right? If you get my drift, right? Ryan Golds is not...
In a quarter mile, turn right onto Veteran Avenue.
Ryan Golds has no association with Ryan Hirsch, but what they're doing is these name associations and cryptic messages to hint about things from my past, to intentionally try to obsessionally loop, create paranoia, create schizophrenia, create any type of mental illness to remove me from society, no matter what it takes, and make it look like I just flipped out, went crazy, something bad happened, I'm dead, gone, in jail, or mental institutions, right? Okay, so
Turn right onto Veteran
hence
Avenue.
Brian Weaver and Ryan Hirsch getting together, and Brian doing his one-day semi-bully. Remember, a real bully are like someone that beats you up every day of your life
Continue on Veteran Avenue for half a mile.
for not giving you their lunch money or just doesn't like you. But it's not a one-time thing, right? So Brian Weaver one day semi-bullies Ryan Hirsch. I'm called into the principal office. They pin it on me. I tell them it wasn't me. This is a middle school, right? That's that. We're not talking the end of the world. Let's just theoretically say I did bully Ryan Hirsch this one day and push him around a little on a one-day thing. I'm not going to tell you that that's right. But what I am going to say is that's not the type of thing that has NSA, FBI, and worldwide murder operations saying you're a bully because when you were 10 years old, you pushed Brian Hirsch around a little, especially when it was Brian Weaver, and with all the other things Brian Weaver did as well. Okay, so I talked about that in my last segment. Another person, Brian Weaver, according to Brian Weaver, said that he punched was a kid named Michael Block, another Michael.
In 800 feet, turn left onto Kinross Avenue.
That was also at A. Right, although I didn't witness this, but I can tell
Turn
you,
left onto Kinross Avenue.
within that time period, I did sort of hang out with Michael Block and go over to his house one day, but we were never really that good of friends or anything.
In 1,000 feet, turn left onto Westwood Boulevard.
But I suspect that what Brian was doing is the same pattern of behavior as everyone else. He sees me go over, hang out with Mike Block, and then he tells me he punched Mike Block, and then the world is told that I punched Mike Block, probably linking that with, or putting that together with Ryan Hirsch. So, for example, Brian Weaver bullies Ryan Hirsch a little. They both pin it on me because he didn't really bully him that bad with any blood or anything, right? Then I go hang out with Michael Block. Then supposedly Brian Weaver punches Mike Block, probably telling the world that now I punched two people, right? And I'm a bully. Building these, trying to make these established fake patterns of behaviors with lie after lie, one sequentially after the next. So you get the idea. I'm at a location I'm going to, so I'm going to pause it right
Turn
here.
left onto Westwood Boulevard.
So, had to drop off return a Yi camera I bought, which I saw online, a 4K Yi camera for these little action cameras, which I'm using here, which are pretty cool. The low light isn't that great, but the daytime is really impressive for this tiny little thing and the price. Had to, I saw one for like $69, and I figured make a good backup camera because they're so small you just lose them. I lost one defective one. By the way, the build quality is pretty crappy though. Most of the ones I've ordered have needed to be shipped back. The first one has some weird horizontal banding, but then I lost it before I could even ship it, RMA it back. The next one has a power button issue, so the build quality is pretty crappy, but the technology, the firmware operating system is pretty reliable, and the cell phone streaming is really fast, so it's a good camera. Just plan on possibly shipping some back until you get one that works. But yeah, so I bought one for $69, but of course, you know, I'm shopping by price, and I didn't realize that they made several versions of the Yi 4K. So I accidentally ordered the older model of the 4K. So I had to order a new one. Of course, it was 120 instead of 69, which is still really cheap for a camera that can do 4K with the quality in that size. But of course, then I realized the one I just got doesn't have a USB 3.1 Type-C, so I can't pipe a microphone like the 4K Plus I have. So anyways, you know, the headaches of super quick camera buying and nothing ever working out. But then that's what you get when you're dealing with these little tiny toy things and not real hardware. So anyways, whatever. And had to get a Slurpee, of course, which for some reason Tom Farley 17 years ago had a problem with me going to 7-Eleven and buying a Slurpee after moving into my house, trying to get anything possible to use against me. Anyway, okay, now that you have been completely sidetracked with irrelevant information, I will go back to Michael Block and Ryan Hirsch and Brian Weaver. And the one thing I wanted to mention about those people and those incidences, which really you should put a lot of weight on what I'm about to say, is that supposedly Kevin Perlman, at this point, we can assume that Mike Block is thrown into the amount of people I've supposedly bullied, since for some reason my family's telling the world that not only with the police and government, that not only am I a white supremacist after kissing a black girl, but supposedly I'm this horrific bully that needs to be hunted and killed and bullied by everyone I'm in contact with worldwide for these insignificant events that even if they were me, you couldn't care less, right? We got Jason Gordon I did mouth off to, and he punched me in the stomach. That was over with instantly. You have the Ryan Hirsch incident, which Brian Weaver bullied one day slightly without actually punching and no blood or anything, which Kevin Perlman is accused of being a bully. And you have the Michael Block thing, which you might as well just throw in there with the rest of this pattern of behavior of theirs to frame me and rid me of the world. Okay. And I think in one of my other videos I talked about Javier at Southern Oregon State College joking around with his girlfriend Dawn or whatever, saying if you mess with the bully you get the horns or whatever, somehow watching the LAPD hunt me down, one calling himself Officer Toro to hint about those comments from Javier or whatever, right? Things that don't make any sense. Okay, so the question you might be asking is the question I've been asking for 17 years since I found out what was going on, is if Kevin Perlman bullied all these people, why didn't my family say, you know, Kevin, you did this and bullying is wrong and that is unacceptable and we're watching you and blah 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 and you better not bully anyone again, right? Do you understand where I'm coming from here? Okay, Kevin Perlman is labeled the end-all be-all of bullies, and there's a worldwide campaign to kill him with billions, yes, billions of government dollars. Every police officer on this planet, every person has all been told if they see Kevin Perlman, rid him of the world. He's a horrible, mean monster that needs to die and be gone, right? But yet, my family has never approached me saying, Kevin, you have done all these things, and you're a bully, and that's unacceptable. We're not going to tolerate it. And obviously, The reason why is my response would be, I didn't bully these people. Yeah, sure, I mouthed off to Jason Gordon and he went ballistic and punched me in the stomach. Brian Weaver did this to Mike Block, and Brian Weaver did this to Ryan Hirsch. And if you're calling me a liar, do you have any proof that I didn't do it, as opposed to Brian Weaver, right? And of course, like everything else in the last 40 years of my life, I have not been approached with anything. It's just cryptic hints that I am a horrible monster, with people like Mike Huntley telling me I'm a dead man and careless, and my father saying I know what I did, my mother saying my past caught up with me, but yet nothing specific addressed, talked about in any way, shape, or form ever, while there's worldwide campaigns to kill their own son, which they say they love, whatever their definition of love is. Might be something like the Spanish Inquisition. Anyways, you get the idea that obviously they damn well know that there's nothing I've done, and they're obviously part of these frame jobs to disseminate these lies to the world. Because why would you be vague? You've done something, you're going to pay. Well, something that generally doesn't cut it, you know? Right? Specifically, what did I do so that I could defend myself? But remember my father's statement, you are not allowed to defend yourself. Same with Mike Huntley working with him. You are not allowed to defend yourself. Hence, their motives, them showing their true colors, them showing that this isn't about anything I've done. It's about just trying to rid me of the world for no reason. Or that reason is something bigoted or racist, like your kind can't exist, whatever they meant by my kind. I don't exactly know. Anyways, you get the idea. Okay, so let's proceed with Brian Weaver. That was 7th, 8th grade, so you can realize how young this starts. And remember, at the same time, Tom Farley is working on me with Tracy Picos, because they're mad at me because I thought Christy Reynolds was cute and couldn't take my eyes off of her. Let's see. Around this time, I think I was building radio control cars, and before that, I would build like those little plastic car models where you glue together. I don't know if this generation even knows what the hell I'm talking about. We used to buy little car boxes at the hobby store with cars, and they had like hundreds and hundreds of little plastic parts, and you glued each part together, and you built and you painted like a little plastic car, right? Whatever, you put it up on your you're up on your little mantle or whatever. I built this model car or whatever. There were actually models of everything. There were models of boats and cars and planes and whatever. And so I had all these cars I built. I think this was before I was building the radio control cars and putting faster little electric motors and things like that. I guess this must have been around 16 at this point when Brian Weaver came over, and he saw the models of cars. It could have been younger, actually. Maybe it was young. I'm not sure, but whatever. 14 to 16. Let's just say that. And he comes over, and he sees them, and he just starts smashing the cars, right? Now, I'm not going to be like them and say, well, Brian Weaver is a psychotic murderer because he smashed my model cars and he needs to be hunted and killed with worldwide support. But what I am going to say is, we're talking about a guy that's running around, and he's flat out told me at 29 to 33, where one of their friends, I think, had a little bachelor party, or not a bachelor, yeah, a bachelor party, and they had a stripper come over, and the stripper, whatever, you know, the stripper did her thing. She does her little lap dances and puts on her show and looks sexy and makes her money and whatever. And after that, after the stripper left, Brian Weaver told me in a really angry, mean voice that I was being publicly shamed, right? While of course being harassed by everyone at this bachelor party, which means it probably wasn't even a real bachelor party. It was probably just some guys that came over, hired a stripper, and wanted to take out their anger on me. Now, remember, first of all, when Brian Weaver's saying I'm being publicly shamed, which just happens to be a planet full of people, which is odd, because how does Brian Weaver, no matter what age he is, have billions of dollars of NSA, FBI resources to publicly shame Kevin Pearlman and exterminate him? Doesn't really make much sense to begin with. Second of all, when Brian Weaver is saying that I'm being publicly shamed for all these things that he did, most importantly, that he did, means these are frame job operations, and it's not just him working alone. Now, he's obviously also alluding to and sending me hinting messages with their street theater or dramatized suggestive reenactments of Melody, the stripper that Michael Huntley wanted me to bounce for at a couple bachelor parties at the age when I was 16. Now here we are at 29 years old, probably a little older, probably more like 34, and Michael and Brian Weaver with my other friends are taking it upon themselves to publicly shame me, try to humiliate me for something nobody could care less about, right? So what? Some kid bounces for a stripper at 16 for some bachelor parties. Who cares? Whoop-de-doo. I don't think that's the thing that stops the planet from rotating here, okay? Now, let's talk about credibility. This guy, who is such a good person, Brian Weaver, comes over to my house at 16, and he's smashing all my car models, right? Well, I'm not going to, like I said before, I'm not going to tell you that's the worst thing in the world, but what I am going to say is that makes a statement about what Brian Weaver thinks about me, right? So, what are we saying? We're saying at 16 years or 14 years old, Brian Weaver shows his anger, rage, jealousy, and aggression for me, Kevin Pearlman, because he's coming over and for no reason he sees that I've built all these cars that I've taken all this time and energy building, and he's smashing them, right? I mean, if we're going to talk about psychology or psychoanalysis, then we are going to talk about those behaviors. Remember, everything I've been told is Kevin Pearlman's behavior, but everyone else's behavior, no matter what they do to Kevin Pearlman, is fine. They're doing nothing wrong, they're committing no crimes. You could chop off my arms and legs with machetes, chop my head off with a chainsaw, and everyone on this planet would say that their behavior is fine, and I've wronged everyone for getting blood on them. Okay, so, right there at 16, you can see that Brian Weaver has it out for Kevin Pearlman, and if we take out the beyond any level of rare conspiring frame job operations with teachers and government support, you can still see that Brian Weaver has aggression towards Kevin Pearlman for going over to his house into some kind of jealous, angry rage and smashing the car models, whatever. Not that, like I said before, not the biggest deal in the world, but it shows some kind of hate or anger towards me. So, let me think. I'm going to check this time. I came prepared, and I've written some notes about what I'm going to talk about because there's just so much, and trust me, in these notes, they don't even come close to what I need to talk about just on Brian Weaver alone. But okay, so now we're in high school, right? I'm friends with Brian Weaver, Tom Hoke, sorta Alex something, I can't remember. Oh, Alex Armacost, Joel Littman, Shane Weeks, and that was kind of like my little clique. And we weren't the popularity clique or anything. And so, remember that I was moved back a grade in T1, and so I'm like a year older than most of the people in my grade, and I'm 1 year less than my brother's friends, right? Creating a weird situation. Anyways, it wasn't really that weird for me, but for some reason they had a problem with it. So anyways, I'm in ninth grade, Calabasas High. I get into building cars because obviously you can tell from everything I'm talking about, I started at a young age building car models. I then ramped up to radio control cars, and then sort of souping up the radio control cars as much as you could. Then building gas radio control car, which is a whole story behind that with my father thinking that I failed and this and that. And then after that, obviously I get into building real cars. I turn 16. All my friends get their little Calabasas High BMWs from their rich families, and I make a choice that, I would rather. I'm not into that. I'm into the classic 68 Camaros, Firebirds, Corvettes, Chargers, Barracudas. The cool shit, right? The nostalgic shit, right? I couldn't care less about some pretty BMW that I try to impress people with money. I'd rather build shit, do something, instead of try to feel important by throwing around dollar bills, right? Okay, so whatever, we go through a phase looking for cars. Some of them were just completely overkill, hot rods, whatever. I ended up buying an 85 Trans Am, a used 85 Trans Am, which I think I mentioned that my brother was working some transvestite angle because there's a T in Trans Am or something that doesn't make any sense. Or transgender too. Maybe his thing is try to chop off my brother's dick and turn him into a transgender or something. Hence why he probably became a urologist with a psychology degree. You want to do the math? There's the math of a brother that's a psychotic nut job that uses psychology degrees and medical degrees to try to harm, maim people while trying to look like a good person. Whatever. So I start building cars. Now, what's important when I talk about this, and what you need to understand, and this applies to everything from Skylar on IRC in 95 befriending me after I say, "Why is the sky blue?" Eric Christensen and Sherry Christensen befriending me at the same time after buying the Lord's Gym t-shirt, right? And the point I'm getting at is Brian Weaver, Shane Weeks, getting into building cars after I do it. After. Now the reason I'm emphasizing after is because their argument, just like everything else, is that I'm copying them and I'm competing with them, right? I am somehow competing with these people. Well, last I checked, if Brian Weaver is a year younger than me, and same with Shane Weeks, and their argument is that I'm somehow competing with them, then how did I start getting into cars and building cars a year before they got their license or were 16, right? That's impossible. You can't compete with someone if you started doing it before they even were capable of doing it, right? And that applies to everyone. It applies to the photography industry, and Aubrey Fisher saying that I'm competing with her. Well, I got into photography in 1996, and she got into photography in 2005. Whatever. The Alexis Amore things, I'm somehow competing with her, even though I can't even tell you how I could compete with her, because I'm not a fucking stripper or porn star, and even if I was, I'm a guy. You can't. That's like competing. That's like that's like calling an apple and orange the same thing. You can't. It's impossible, right? So, my point is that these people all are completely full of shit, but what you need to ask yourself is, how come there's so many strangers coming into my life, all told to do the same exact thing? That's the important question, right? Alexis Amore and every other stripper or porn star I've ever been in contact with on any level, even on the internet, knew who I was way the fuck before they even got into porn or the adult industry or the mainstream acting industry, and then started focusing on me, how I'm doing all these things to them. Well, it's strange that these strangers, one sequentially after the next, come out of the woodworks saying, look what Kevin did to me, look what Kevin did to me, look what Kevin did to me, trying to create this illusion or perception that Kevin has a pattern of behavior of doing these things to all these people, which is completely impossible or doesn't make sense. Okay, so anyways, you get the idea. Brian Weaver comes into my life, Brian Weaver gets into cars with Shane Weeks after Kevin Perlman. Right there. The entire argument based on Kevin's competing with me, and Kevin's like Arnold Schwarzenegger sabotaging me, and Kevin's doing this, doesn't add up. Their arguments are full of shit. They don't even make any factual or logical sense. Now, the cars. Of course, I'm the nice, accepting, kind person being bullied by these mass groups, and we've established a pattern of behavior that the bullies are saying that Kevin Perlman's a bully, and then saying he's a violent, paranoid schizo. With the LAPD and government and psychology community. Now that's where things really get strange. We're not talking about a couple of competing assholes here. We're talking about illegal government operations. Okay, so I get into cars, and let me think. So I'm building my Trans Am, and the first thing I build, I think my first project was to pull the 305 out, put in a bigger camshaft, crank the pistons up to 11-to-1 compression. Nothing too drastic. I pull the engine out, I rebuild the engine, I put it in the car. Of course, Tom brings Tracy Pete goes over to my house in Hidden Hills for some reason. Whatever. And obviously working some angle. And Brian Weaver, when he gets his license, he then copies me, which is fairly normal within social cliques. I'm not going to say that that's not normal, but what I am going to say is when you have a worldwide campaign to kill you over it, saying you competed and you're a monster and need to die, and did horrible things to Brian Weaver, okay, that's not competing. Those are government targeting operations. Okay, so Brian Weaver buys a Chevelle, a red and black Chevelle, and ironically, even though they were Chevy colors, ironically, in the movie Jack Reacher, he steals the red and black Chevelle from the thugs, and while some of my other conversations I talk about the mental illness tactics with the entertainment industry, I'm pretty sure that Jack Reacher and Nat Chevelle were intentional subliminal messages or references directed at me about Brian Weaver to try to flip me out, just like 80% of the media out there. Reason being, the reason I can tell you this with such confidence is because the entire term reaching out came around me, Kevin Perlman. And this isn't one of these things. It goes from thing to thing like this, off of social networks. People are mad at me for some reason. Of course, like everything else, they won't tell me what it's about. So everything I say, they sort of take and they mimic in anger. So, for example, I was saying in some of my previous segments, like, for example, instead of saying little, L-I-T-T-L-E, I joked around and I said little, L-I-L. Now, you'll notice everyone on the internet, when they say little, L-I-L. And when I mentioned, or when I said, I also discussed this in a previous segment, that I felt that Alexis Amore had a good vibe when I met her at the Spearmint Rhino, and she was professional and this and that. Everyone now uses vibe like 1,000,000 times per day, right? Now this jumps from thing after thing I say or joke around about, showing that there is a worldwide pattern of behavior of people watching everything I do and then mimicking it, except the problem is that I don't have that many followers on my social networks. Meaning that even when I had 10 people following me on Twitter, whatever I said went worldwide, meaning that everything I say and do is collected, disseminated, offloaded to the world, and has been my entire life since 5 years old, hence why my brother was telling me weird freaky things, that they have a bug in my room, and are listening to everything I do on the radio because they wanted to flip me out into a paranoid schizophrenic state, with the illusion that everyone is watching me. And ironically, these NSA and FBI operations with the psychology community, they're doing just that to try to skull fuck me and make me look crazy. Example, everything you do is NSA data mined. It's taken out of context. It's given to the entire planet. The entire planet is pissed off at you in an anger and rage. And then you're told you're imagining it, and that's impossible. What is the reasoning? Well, the reasoning is to flip you out, make you look crazy, and rid you of the world. Hence why they arrested me, saying that I'm a violent paranoid schizo instead of just admitting to the situation. Right? Now, why wouldn't you admit to the situation like that? Well, that's because these are government extermination and targeting operations with the psychology community. Okay, so so the reason, or you're wondering where reaching out came from, it came from a Fish Islands photo I did of myself joking around on Twitter and Facebook, reaching my hand out like this on a wide-angle fisheye lens, saying, what did I say? My comment was, take my hand. Right? Joking around. Take my hand. And after that, they started using the term reaching out. Now, obviously, the term progressed into the movie The Last Jedi and things like that. But originally, it went from Kevin to people saying it on the phone to me and on the internet to Jack Reacher to Star Wars Last Jedi, right? But it all originates for me. Now the problem is that I'm not some famous actor that makes $50 million a year. I'm a guy who's watching this happen, watching every person I meet in anger and rage that you're a dead man. Won't tell me what it's remotely about, which is strange. And the more I tell them that's going on, the more they tell me, you better not say anything or we're going to kill you. Showing that I'm obviously the one in the right. Hence, you can see how they're collecting fragments of my life, and they're putting these things in movies and songs and media, and every person I talk to on the planet mimics things back from what I say in anger and rage, and you can see it in their eyes. They're beyond any level of pissed off for some reason that I'm not allowed to know what it's about, showing that I'm innocent because no one tells someone they've done something, but we're not going to tell you what, and we have worldwide support to kill you with billions of government dollars. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, so back to Brian. So you understand now that they're putting cars and things from my past in movies to try to punish me and create obsessional loopings until I give them some kind of coerced false confession so that they can arrest me and lock me away for these imaginary crimes. And it's all being done with the psychology community. Police, government, NSA, FBI. Okay, so after this, let me think. My family doesn't like me building engines and working on cars, and why, I don't know. It all seems to come down to a kid in a white-collar neighborhood with rich boy neighborhood exerting blue-collar type of hobbies, I guess. That would be my first guess. And them not being able to deal with that. The next goes into my family's control issues of my father claiming that I stole $10,000 from him because I was working in his office at Golden State Sports Medical to make money to work on my cars because that was my passion, and that is something that you would think your parents would be proud of you for taking that initiative when you didn't have to. But not only that, I think my father offered me the job. I don't think I went to him. I think he said, Kevin, you want to work in my office? Meaning that he set me up like usual, like all his other setups, to say that I stole his money. Because in order for him to sabotage me building cars, he has to tell everyone that I'm stealing his money and I'm a criminal. Just like kissing the black girl and them not wanting me to associate with other races and cultures because they're the bigoted racists, leads to the world being told I'm a white supremacist after showing that I'm completely open-minded and accept everyone, right? So Brian Weaver, after this, obviously was approached and told to copy me with Shane Weeks. So, at this point, and this is where things get really spooky, and I wasn't picking up on what was going on at 16, everyone wants to go out on Friday nights to where all the people with hot rods meet, which is fairly normal, except where the hot rods were meeting were at a restaurant called Kevin's Burgers. Get that? Kevin's Burgers. Okay? Now, sure, I do believe in coincidences, but now with what I've seen and looking back, that was not a coincidence, which means what? It means that they had to contact all these people all around the San Fernando Valley with hot rods and say, everyone meet at Kevin's Burgers. Why? Because we want to make Kevin mentally ill. Was that their wording back then? I can't answer that. but I think it was, and I can explain why. But I'm not going to yet. So we meet. So every Friday night we go to Kevin's Burgers. And then after that, later at night, we would go to Mason, which is a street, and it was about a quarter mile, and just enough for people to street race, right? And that's what they did. They all went to Kevin's Burgers, they went to Mason afterwards, and they street raced down Mason, which was closed off by railroad tracks on one end. And everyone hung out in like some out of business Gemco or something like that parking lot. Now later on, after 29, there's a porn star named Mason Moore, and she chose the name Mason because of my life in that street, and ironically following me to paying a Starbucks, but like most of them, walked by in hopes that I would say something to her, so that she could probably turn around like everyone else has done and saying, I'm stalking her, followed her, and won't leave her alone. Although that didn't happen because I didn't talk to her, but it happened with hundreds of other ones, right? You get the idea. Okay. Just like the whole Chasey Lane porn star incident of her flying on the same airline as me, which wasn't a coincidence, and I think I discussed that in a one of my other segments. If not, I'll discuss it later. That seems to be pretty big, and that's more towards University of Colorado days, so I haven't gotten there. Sorry, where was I? So Kevin's Burgers. So obviously the reason they were going to Kevin's Burgers was to send me hidden messages about Kevin Perlman and hamburgers, but this goes a lot deeper, especially with hamburgers. Okay? The reason they chose Kevin's Burgers had to do with when I was 16, my brother, remember I mentioned that my brother is Jason Perlman, my brother is 2 years older than me. I was moved back a grade, so I'm right in the middle of my friends and my brother's friends, and I ended up hanging out with both of them. Well, my brother and his friends at these parties we had at my dad's house, or get-togethers, with my friends and his friends and both and whatever, what my brother would do, he and his friends would make combustion burgers, which was kind of a little catchy, and I did it a few times. But they would make combustion burgers, and what he was doing with these combustion burgers and why he called them combustion burgers was because their entire goal was to throw a slab of meat on the barbecue and then pour as much alcohol in the hamburger to try to get it to explode. That's why they called it combustion burgers. And his story was that when he was making one the first time, it exploded, so it became like a little trend thing, right? Whenever they go out barbecue and just load it up with wild turkey and vodka and whatever they could throw in it, and try to get the hamburger to explode, which I never saw happen, of course, because I don't think hamburgers really explode that way unless the meat is airtight and there has to be some kind of compression bubble to make them explode. But anyways, I'm not here to debate with anyone whether you can make a hamburger explode from alcohol. I really couldn't care less. The point is that there was a reasoning and thought process behind why my brother and friends and he was being told to create combustion burgers, and that reason was to send me, Kevin Perlman, hidden schizo messages about women being meat Also, they use references of cars being and women because of a paper I wrote in like 10th grade, which was about cars, curves, and women in an English class, which they were using against me. But the hinting messages he was trying to send me, the schizo messages or the schizo references, were about Kevin Perlman trying to make women explode in anger. Okay? That's what the entire meat or hamburger or combustion burger thing, and linking to Kevin's Burgers. So, once you understand their little cryptic thug language to try to flip me out and make me crazy, the hidden messages that they're sending me in order to get these coerced false confessions, or is that I'm a horrible, mean asshole who tries to flip women out, keep passive-aggressively provoking them until they explode like a combustion burger, hence going to the street races where women are cars and Kevin's Burgers. If you get the analogy, Kevin has a slew of women who keep exploding. And why are these women exploding? Because Kevin supposedly is a horrible, mean asshole doing it to them. Okay, well, the next question you're going to ask me is, Kevin, that seems kind of far-fetched, even though most of the world who sees this probably already knows that this is true, is going to say, well, Kevin, how the hell do you know this? That hasn't been said to you. No, it has not directly been said. Yet every girl I have ever met wants me dead. Why is that? The nicest guy known to man. Every girl on the planet wants dead. The nicest guy known to man who kissed a black girl is being hunted and called a white supremacist, with the black community, Asian community, Persian community, and every other community, and women saying that I'm a wife beater, trying to hunt me down and kill me because I exerted kindness and expressed warmth by kissing a black girl, is synonymous with all these women saying I'm a horrible, mean asshole, and trying to blow them up because my family does not like me, and hence my punishment for being a really good person is to be hunted and killed with worldwide support based on, like I said before, lies, smears, slander, defamation, libel, lies to the world to fearmonger the world against Kevin Perlman, none of which are true. Okay, so back to the question I'm answering. How do I know this? Well, example, 16 years old. For no reason at all. A girl I have a crush on, Corey Bixby. Of course, never really told her, was too shy, whatever. I'm not going to dwell on the past and shit like that. But what I am going to tell you is that they saw that with their predatorial behaviors, they saw a weakness. And so Corey Bixby at 16 was told to ask me to drive her home in my Trans Am. And I drove her home. And for absolutely no reason at all, she's irate and pissed off, doesn't really say anything, is just mad after that. Maybe at the age 37, I find out because my father is trying to guilt me into a coerced false confession like he does from thing to thing, hinting that it's because I pushed on the gas pedal imperfectly, right? So this Kevin Perlman is a passive-aggressive serial killer all hinges on situations like a really good-looking girl saying, Kevin, will you drive me home? Me doing absolutely nothing wrong to her, except maybe not asking her out, which might have been what she wanted, and then deciding that for some strange reason the world needs to be told with billions of government dollars that Kevin Perlman hates women, is a wife beater. She asked me to drive her home, and I did horrible things to her, which, like everything else, don't exist, like those horrible, inappropriate behaviors of me resting my feet on a chair at a coffee shop that nobody normally could care less about, right? Showing that Kevin is not trying to blow up or do horrible things to women. That Kevin is being the nicest person imaginable, but he's shy and he's quiet, and the predators are coming in saying, will you drive me home? I'm going to kill you. Or Aubrey Fisher, will you help me with my photography? I'm going to kill you. Or Victoria Walker, Kevin, will you help me with this? Will you help me with that? I'm going to kill you. Right? All the same things. And each and every time, larger and larger worldwide groups hunt me down to kill me. Worldwide. One person sequentially after the next on this planet to have me killed because women come in my life and say, Kevin, will you help me? And I show kindness. Right? Doesn't make any sense. But how they're covering up these operations is, like I said, my brother and family and Brian Weaver and the police and government and psychology community doing things like telling the world that I'm a white supremacist and a wife beater and a woman hater, and I'm trying to explode women in anger and rage with passive-aggressive psychological warfare. Hence, we're going to take you to Kevin's Burgers to hint that all these women are combustion burgers, and we want that coerced false confession from you because you're a horrible monster, and if you don't confess to what you did, we're going to hunt you down and kill you with worldwide support. While Kevin Perlman, he runs around saying, what the fuck is this about? Will you tell me what this is about? You know what you did. You're a horrible monster. Your past caught up with you. What is this about? No, I'm not going to tell you what this is about. And as my father states, people who've done something wrong are not allowed to know what anything's about and are not told normally what things are about. Yeah, right. Bullshit. Remember, my father has a psychology degree and is an orthopedic surgeon who puts shock collars on his dogs. There you go. That's all you need to know. Okay. So, Kevin's Burgers, the street races. Okay, so now, I believe while everyone was racing their cars on Mason every single Friday night, nobody could care less, okay? Nobody in that crowd, the citywide groups were off doing their own things, and I didn't see any righteous people running around in anger and rage that society wasn't perfect. They were off in their own world doing their own things. And, once in a while, maybe the cops came by and broke it up so they knew what was going on. Right? Okay. So, while all these people are racing this kind of half-ass quarter mile every single Friday night, and a lot of people were doing a lot crazier shit, like rolling actual non-streetable cars out in Camarillo for high money races and shit, not just fucking around, people fucking around. Oh, that's right, everyone always had the we'll race for money and my engine's crappier than your scams and all that. I forgot all about that. But me, I never raced for money. I think I only raced one guy once, and I've raced Brian Weaver a second time. And that one race, that one single race, right? Remember, keep this in perspective, just like going to coffee shops. Everyone's racing every Friday night, but Kevin Perlman races once, and a guy is waiting on the side of the road, and I didn't pick this up back then, I didn't know this was intentional. A guy is waiting on the shoulder, just like I mentioned the lady at the Honda dealership who T-boned my, did the T-bone setup, right? Throwing her car perpendicular in the fast lane to cause an accident. At the street races on Mason, this guy did the same exact thing, right? So, okay, this isn't a one-time event here. We have the Honda dealership, someone trying to throw their vehicle in front of me to cause an accident, actually did cause an accident, and the lady getting out of her car and screaming that I tried to kill her, after setting me up with the police and insurance companies. And then I'm at Mason, and trust me, all these guys with their cars at the street races were way the hell faster than mine. I mean, we had 700 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower. We had Panteras with 427s. We had 429 Bosses. We had 454 Chevelles. We had like 570 stroked big blocks. But yet Kevin Perlman has this, you know, kind of souped up Trans Am, and he does one single cheeseball street race, and another person, obviously connected events, sitting on the right shoulder of the road, launches his vehicle at me, right in front of me to try to get me to hit the side of his car, which my driving skills were good enough back then to manage to sort of slide my car sideways and get around him. A lot easier to do in a rear wheel drive car with some torque in it, trust me, than like a piece of shit like this, which is a front wheel rice burner, but whatever. So I managed to avoid that car, but I didn't realize back then that I was being set up, right? Now, right now, if you're listening to everything I've told you, and I really haven't even gotten into anything at all, you're probably sitting there going, that's fucking insane. To contact a citywide group of people to go to a restaurant called Kevin's Burgers, which they probably changed the name intentionally to get me to go there, to say that I'm a violent, paranoid schizo full of anger and rage. I'm a white supremacist who is trying to make women explode in anger, and people are launching vehicles at me. We got women wanting me to drive them home or ask me for favors, claiming I've done all these horrible things to them that don't exist. You would say that's fucking insane. Wait a minute. Just the few things that I've listed don't happen to anyone with that kind of energy and resources. Woman after woman, how can I set up and remove Kevin from society? Citywide groups going to restaurants who changed their names, who said Kevin Perlman or a person's schizophrenia messages to collapse their brain or get coerced false confessions. All with the psychology community, right? And police and government. I mean, that alone you would have to say, what did this guy do at 5 years old, right? Did I, at 5 years old, did I build an atomic bomb and blow up 100,000 people in a football stadium I'm not aware of? Because if I haven't done anything on that magnitude, none of this makes any sense. Okay. So, let's see. Brian Weaver. Okay, so now, Brian Weaver starts hanging out in Thousand Oaks at Hawaii Racing with Pineapple Joe. This is actually a little before. My timeline's a little off, but it doesn't matter. Brian's hanging out with Pineapple Joe at Hawaii Racing in Thousand Oaks, which later on he moves to Simi Valley. And all sorts of things with Pineapple Joe were done to sort of dig around and try to prove that I'm not a good person, right? These little intricate setups. Example, eventually after I build the 305, I want to put a 454. I noticed Joe has some float heads for a 454 sitting on the floor as an race heads, and they're all flowed by, you know, a competent flow shop. This day and age, things are a lot different now that we have computer-based flowing, but whatever. So I want to build a 454 to put in my Trans Am, and well, whether people are going to try to question how ethical this is and that, trust me, back then, people were doing this shit all day and night. I mean, I saw Opel GTs with blown 454s in them, okay? whatever. So I start building a 454, and with these, I buy these heads from Joe. I'm making the money at my father's company, which I'm filing in this file room until my fingers bleed, so I can work on cars. Like I told you, my father's running around saying that I stole $10,000 from him with Denise, his secretary, because he wants to, like everything else, sabotage me from building cars, like every other aspect of my life, like playing pool or going to coffee shops or dating women. And so, at one point, Joe does the okay, that's right. At one point, so Joe says, well, Kevin, I have, and this isn't really a right or wrong answer, but at one point, Joe says to me, well, Kevin, I have this 426 Hemi out of a front rail dragster sitting on the floor, for $10,000, and this is obviously before my father's lie. For $10,000, instead of building this engine, it's going to cost you this. It's the same price. It's going to come out the same. So why don't I just trade you this engine for what you're building, whatever? And it looked like a really good deal because you got like 80% more engine for the cost, right? Now, at the same time, I can't remember the time frame. Joe was doing all sorts of, like, you paid me this much money and here's this much back, trying to get me to lie to him, right? They also did it in the supermarket out there where someone gave me the wrong amount of change back, and it was something that Adriana Olivares knew 30 years ago, or 20 years later, hunting me down over, saying that I'm not a good, credible person because something like I was in a supermarket and they gave me $5 back instead of $1. Something like that, right? Something you would never even give a shit about. Trying to attack my credibility, to profile me to the world, to show the world that I'm a horrible, out-of-control monster. The things they've been doing to me since 5. Right? These frame jobs. So Joe was told to do the same types of things with the money for the engine. But Joe also told me, which I highly doubt is true this day and age, not that it even matters or there's any relevance to it, that the engine that I bought was sold to him from a drug dealer. Okay? Well, first, I don't know many drug dealers that get into front engine drag racing at drag strips. That's the first thing. This is looking back. The second thing is, when you have a father hunting you down, trying to fucking kill you with psychological warfare and worldwide mobbings, he hires a x-ray tech who he makes an office manager, Lorena Escobar, using the last name Escobar to try to plant seeds in my head about Pablo Escobar, and pretending that I purchased an ex-drug dealer's car engine. Of course, nothing ever being said about anything, and there's a worldwide campaign to kill me with the LAPD and Rody Morales trying to plant trash bags of marijuana in my house are not only the weirdest out of the norm situations known to man, but let's think about this. You're telling me that a drug dealer sold his engine to a hot rod shop from a front engine dragster. Do you know what that means? That means that this drug dealer was out drag racing. Yeah, right. On drag strips. Yeah, right. Okay. Now also, the drug dealer is now mad 40 years later because I purchased an engine that he sold to an engine shop. Yeah, that makes sense. And not only this, We're talking about a drug dealer a drug dealer like Pablo Escobar, who makes like billions of dollars, gives a shit about a $10,000 engine that he sold and doesn't have anymore. Yeah, that makes sense, right? So what is going on here? Well, think about it. You have a family. They're hunting you down with a planet full of people, right? They're sending people with the LAPD after you named Rody Morales. Rody Morales keeps wanting you to call Hawaii Racing about an engine. Rody Morales is taking to strip clubs, working with groups of people throughout your entire life, trying to set you up and rid you of the world from changing operations, right? First it's you hate women, then it's you're a white supremacist, then it's you're supposedly a drug dealer, whatever, then it's you're a car thief, then it's you're a pedophile, right? Changing from thing to thing, okay? Doesn't make any sense. Now, we have a father, he won't tell you, with a mother or anyone else, they won't specifically tell you what's going on. Unheard of. Unheard of. Even if Pablo Escobar was hunting you down, you'd still say, well, you pissed off Pablo Escobar, right? Okay. So that's all bullshit. Now, the father and the mother, my father and mother, say, you know what you did and your past caught up with you to create obsessional looping for me to look back on my life while they refuse with everyone else on the planet to tell me what I've supposedly done. Doesn't make sense, right? Why are they doing that? Remember, these people have psychology degrees, okay? They're psychologists who are psychotic murderers. Why are they doing it? Because they want me to think that I did something wrong. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? They're not going to tell me I did something wrong because there's nothing I did wrong. But if I look back on my life and I think about all the drug hints or drug dealer hints, I'm going to say, well, I bought an engine from supposedly a drug dealer who sold it. Maybe that's it. Then the family is going to try to reinforce with their psychology degrees, you know what you did and you're associating with shady people, right? But this isn't how the world works. This isn't how these situations work. So back to the LAPD in 1997 sending Skylar after me to tell me that they're going to skull fuck me to death and kill me comes down to the correct answer. It's not about anything specific. It's not about anything I've done wrong. It's about my family, the psychology community deciding that for some reason they're going to exterminate me for reasons I cannot answer. This kid exerts a passion above the norm and he's going to go out and he's doing these big things like building big engines and therefore he's could be out of control and a potential problem, so we're going to kill him so that never happens. Well, that goes against the Constitution, and that's also what we call murder. I don't like you, I'm going to kill you. I don't trust you, I'm going to kill you. Remember, there's nothing I've done wrong. I did not buy a 426 Hemi, put it in a car, drive through 30 houses with it. As a matter of fact, I was going to detune the Hemi, put on small carburetors and do whatever it takes to lower the horsepower and make it back to a streetable 426 Hemi that you can purchase this day and age and back then straight at the Dodge dealership, and you can go out right now and get a 426 Hemi Charger, and you could have went out in 1971 and bought a 426 Hemi Barracuda right off the car lot. Okay? So, what does that mean? It means that my family, like everything else, and the police and government, are taking a situation where nothing exists, nothing has gone wrong, nothing has happened, and they are fabricating complete fiction, out of context statements to turn the entire planet against me on illegal information dissemination operations to have me killed. Example, Kevin Perlman's reckless. He bought a 426 Hemi out of a dragster. Okay, sure, whatever. But what happened? What happened with the Hemi? Did Kevin kill anyone, hurt anyone? Did anything happen? No. Right? Matter of fact, it never really got in a car because all that was sabotage. But if it was going to get into a car, and eventually I had bought a 1971 Barracuda, which is the car it originally came in, it was going to go back in to that car, but with a blower, detuned, and streetable like all the other Pro Street cars, right? But in the Perlman family, with NSA, FBI, they don't wait around to see if you do something wrong. Just as all black people need to be hunted and killed, with not coming from me, but coming from them. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're bigoted, racist personalities. Kevin bought a big engine, therefore he's a danger to himself. He needs to die. Is the same exact argument as their skin is black, they need to die because they could be a danger to our people, right? That thinking is a bigoted, racist, dangerous thought process because they're jumping from here to there based on thin air. Nothing has happened. In other words, my point I'm saying is, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. That does not make you a good or bad person. It does not matter what uniform you wear, whether it's a police uniform, a presidential uniform, a car mechanic's uniform, a doctor's uniform. Does not define you. Your actions define you, and what you do define you. Hence, the type of people my family are and what they're doing with the psychology community to have me killed. If you get the idea. Because some of their statements are, I'm out of control, yet there's nothing I've done out of control. I've been 1,000,000,000% in control, and them having people launch vehicles at me shows that I'm in control, and it shows that they're out of control. And what is the reason they want to make me look out of control is to control, right? But this isn't just about control. This is about killing someone and control. Because how many people have you ever seen be told, you better not put salt on your food, or you're committing a crime, and it's a reckless behavior, and if you do put salt on your food, we're going to hunt you down and kill you. Well, that is analogous with what is and has been done to my life since 5 years old. If you put salt on your food, we're going to kill you. Off on that tangent, but very important, explaining the situation, because my lawyers and family will try to use that as mental illness, excuse saying that I suffer from mental illness. Let me try to get back on track with Brian Weaver. Okay, so we have, where are we? Kevin's Burgers, Street Races, Mason, Brian Weaver. At one point, Brian Weaver blew up his engine. This is kind of not necessarily about me, but it is and it's not. Brian Weaver was trying to play the mirror game. You can't see yourself, so we're going to send you schizo messages. So Brian Weaver goes out and he that's right, he bought his Chevelle, his red black Chevelle, and I think it had like a 350 or something in it. And then he goes and he buys nitrous, and then supposedly he puts the biggest nozzle on the nitrous, which is a big no-no on a stock car, and he blows up the engine. So then Brian Weaver tells his family that he blew up his engine. this is the story anyways. Tells his family that he blew up his engine or whatever happened. I don't know what he tells his family. But then his family sports some money for a brand new Joe built Hawaii Racing 454, souped up 454 for Chevelle. Right? And later on, of course, Brian Weaver fucks up and he launches his car on the island, center island, and his dad buys the car off of him, and because his dad realizes that Brian's out of control. Okay, but well, Kevin never did anything like this, right? Needless to say, the reason I believe Brian Weaver intentionally blew up his engine, or said he did, and then his dad bought him a brand new engine, was to lie to his father. Right, you get it? He blows up his engine, he tells his father his engine crapped out. His father gives him like $5,000. He builds a 454 with Joe at Hawaii Racing, puts it in his car, then Brian fucks up because Brian's a low-life piece of shit. You get the idea. And irresponsible, not like me, and whatever. But I believe the reason he was doing it was my family's bullshit, that Kevin can't see himself, and so we're gonna keep trying to cram hidden messages into his skull until his brain gives out and dies, or he admits that he's a bad person and a horrible, reckless monster, which isn't true and isn't even remotely close, and like everything else, is the complete polar opposite of who I am, because they don't like me and they want me dead. Because I'm different from them, and I'm not a societal robot who is born into a family of doctors and does the same exact thing because that's what you should be doing, or you're a bad person if you're not like them identically, right? Okay, so where am I? I think, let me just check my notes here on the car part of Brian Weaver. Chevelle, Jack Reacher, Joe switching 454, drug dealer, girl at supermarket giving me wrong change, as if anyone could fucking care. Brian, community, going to Kevin's Burger. No, okay. So I think I got the overall, with Brian Weaver and cars on a broad definition, or explain the situation in a broad manner without a lot of the intricate specifics. You get the idea that Brian Weaver obviously copied me, was contacted to copy me, to sabotage me from getting into cars on any level, by trying to make me look crazy, you're out of control, and then trying to discredit me, and then work on me with later on with their public shamings of things that they did as cover-up operations to cover up their crimes against me, if you understand, right? In other words, what is Brian Weaver really publicly shaming me for? There's nothing I did wrong. A kid turned 16, he got into building cars, his family didn't like it, that's it. So what is it I did wrong? All the things he accuses me of, he's the criminal. He did, right? Or the rest are just fabricated lies, right? If you understand. None of it is true. None of it. Kevin Perlman did not do anything reckless. Kevin Perlman did not steal any money. Kevin Perlman worked his ass off. Kevin Perlman showed that, well, he could be out drinking with his friends and robbing shit, that Kevin Perlman made the choices in life to go out and do creative things and build engines and strive to better himself and accomplish his passions. All the things that we're taught in America and capitalism to fulfill your American dream and go out and do these things are things that my family, who are basically like communist murderers, disagree with. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what's going on. And my punishment for finding out is to kill me with worldwide support. Okay, So that's the car aspect. Now, obviously in between this, I'm now going to jump to the paint gun aspect. Okay, now remember, we've now set a foundation for who Brian Weaver is, along with all my other friends and every person I'm in contact with my entire life. But for this conversation, we can stick to Brian Weaver, and we've established he has motive. He doesn't like me. He was my friend for years, and he was sent after me. Or he was contacted to take part in illegal government operations with my family. Okay, let's for now say control reasons, but my belief is really it's about I turned 5 and they wanted to just kill me, and sort of the control aspect is an illusion because their argument is that I'm out of control when I'm not, hence what is their real motive, right? Okay, so now we're still on Brian Weaver, and we're going to talk about Richard Carter's house, Brian Weaver getting into paint guns, and Brian Weaver on his next setup attempt at frame job. So, Brian Weaver, Shane Weeks, Richard Carter, I think Tom Hoke all got into paint guns. I'm not sure if Tom Hoke did because he started to branch off with a different crowd with Alex Armacost, and I think Joel Littman went a little that way too. Either way, they all got into paint guns. Whatever, that was a thing back then, and they were building their really cool superpower paint guns with CO2 bottles, and I didn't really get into paint guns. Like I said before, I have never really been a gun person. I couldn't care less about guns. It's very strange to me that my entire life my father's been hunting me down, trying to frame me with guns and knives, but once again, you can understand from the whole polar opposite aspect of some kid that is more into doing cool shit like building hot rods, couldn't really care about the I want AR-15s and shit like that. That was Paul Humphrey. He was a gun fanatic, but he was a paid off loser that was sent after me and invested half his life in trying to have me killed. Just another piece of shit like Mike Huntley, who really has no life and is just a pathetic loser. So keep that in mind. The guy that couldn't care less about guns or violence is labeled that he's some crazy man trying to kill people with guns and knives and this and that. Just like the white supremacist lies to the world, these are just fictional fabrications with creative writers, maybe even Darren Moselle, paid to write these things about me, I don't know, even within Hollywood, and the government spewing these lies on a daily basis to the world. Hence, propaganda systems. Internet-based propaganda systems built in secret. And before the internet, it was just word of mouth by people told to, paid off to contact large groups and disseminate lies. So, we're at Richard Carter's house. They're the paint gun crew. I'm getting my jollies kind of toying around with Brian Weaver's paint gun, and it's unloaded, and I know it's unloaded, so I'm kind of picking it up. And yeah, I know it's wrong to point guns at people, even paint guns, which are generally harmless. You still shouldn't point at people if you're not going to use it, but it was a paint gun, not a real gun, and I was pointing it at Shane, and it was empty, and I was pulling the little trigger, and it was going click, right? Pull the trigger, click, you're just fucking around. You're dicking around, Brian leaves his paint gun around, and you're pulling the gun, and you go click. Okay, well, Brian Weaver sees me doing it. I'm not looking around, I'm not paying attention. Brian Weaver loads the paint gun. Right? I never thought anything about it. Because to me, Brian was my friend. I accepted him. I didn't know that this guy was contacted by my family and the government for extermination operations. So Brian Weaver loads the paint gun. I do what I've been doing all night. I pick up the paint gun and point it at Shane Weeks, and it goes click, but this time it fires a paintball. Keep in mind, we're talking about paint guns here, because if I was holding a frickin' Uzi or something, I sure shit wouldn't be pointing at people. These are guns that everyone goes out on the field with and shoots each other all day with, leaving paint on them. Unfortunately, when Shane Weeks got shot, it didn't hit him on the body, it hit him just right under the eye, which pretty much scared the shit out of me, although I didn't really express myself, because I've always been kind of introverted and more like the absent-minded professor. Needless to say, it hit him like right here, which could have easily taken out his eye. And once again, well, Richard Carter's father was beyond pissed, which I don't blame him. I was like, oh fuck, what did I just do, in shock. And Shane was fucking flipped out. I don't really know what Shane was told, because after 30 years old, I was met with complete hostility for Shane, but then the reality of the situation is that I've been met with complete hostility by them my entire life. I just wasn't picking up on it, if that makes sense. So, hence why Brian was reloading the gun, why Brian was doing these things with the police and government, why Brian was smashing my car models, because I was already met with hostility towards them. Why I was being labeled a bully for Brian Weaver's things, why Corey Bixby was told to make claims out of thin air that I somehow hate women and did things to her, why I've been labeled a white supremacist at 8 years old for kissing a black girl in T1 Sunny Skies day camp, right? So, trust me, the hostility towards me has always been there since 5 years old. And that's the real question. Okay, so, anyways, I don't know what the world's been told about that paint gun incident in Shane Weeks, but I can put, I'm 1,000,000% sure that is like everything else, that Kevin is full of anger and rage, and when he doesn't like someone, he just starts to blast people's eyes out with guns and things like that, taking, like everything else, the entire situation out of context, and coming back to the original, or coming back to what I was saying before. Sorry, lots of cars honking, and I'm trying to figure out why. What I was saying before, just like the bullying, was if someone believed that I did this to Shane intentionally, then why wouldn't my family say, Kevin, you shot Shane in the fucking face with a paint gun, why did you do that, blah, 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 and I would say, well, fucking Brian loaded the goddamn gun when I wasn't looking, but once again, nothing at all has been said to me about that or anything else since 5 years old, except for maybe a couple insignificant things. But my point is that I come from a family who put shock collars on dogs to communicate, okay? Well, normally that's all that you need to say. My father put Maggie in a cage for half its life when it could have been running around the yard, probably because he felt that He didn't want the dog running around the yard, and the pretty yard was probably more important to him than a dog having a good life that he took on the responsibility of purchasing, right? Do you understand where I'm coming from? Now, with that said, up until 29, I thought my fucking family was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, I was rattling off that they are such great people and such accepting people and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then I wake up and I find out there's literally a worldwide extermination campaign to have me killed. At 29, I am now 46. They have not told me what this is about. They keep lying to my face. They keep trying to cover it up. They keep throwing on newer and newer lies or bullshit labels, how I'm crazy and I've done this and that, blah, 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 every freaking day of my life. But yet, and these accusations go to the police, and they go to the government, and they go to the psychology community, and they go worldwide to these propaganda systems to stop me from talking or try to stop me from getting the truth out. Now, imagine that. We're not talking about Two-Faced. We're talking about some new animal of, I'm your friend, but I got worldwide propaganda systems to torture and kill you every time you put salt on your food. Right? Okay, think about that. That's the family I'm coming from. There's no communication. There's no did you do this or did you not do this. There's no, Kevin, I think you're getting in over your head with that engine. There is zero conversation or talk. The only thing my family says is you're the best and I love you, and behind your back it's like they're stockpiling machetes to try to figure out how to cleave off every one of your limbs while giving you a nice friendly smile and hugging you. And you can't even believe what you're seeing, because when you turn 29, you're met with the entire planet trying to have you killed with every police and government resource over reasons I can't comprehend. I cannot tell you what the hell. Right? Did I fart wrong? Did I yawn wrong? Is that why there's billions of government dollars being spent on me? Okay. So anyways, I guess there's not too much talk about that paint gun incident, except at after 29, Tom Farley was working on me at some angle, buying a new engine from Richard Carter's father, working on some angles or whatever. But and also, I should note, while there's a movie called Get Carter, I haven't really spent the time. I watched it years ago, but I guarantee you if I were to watch that movie today, there would be all sorts of suggestive references about everyone's perception of my life in that movie, Get Carter, but I couldn't tell you until I watch it. Being that the percentages are somewhere like 60 to 80%, whatever, let's be realistic. Maybe it's only 40% media has cryptic messages taken from my life, put in the movies, so that when I watch them, they can try to turn me into a violent paranoid schizo. Even if it's 40%, that is still beyond any level of insane known to man, to try to make someone look crazy to rid them of the world. Okay, so that was the paint gun incident with Brian Weaver, which they're trying to cover up. Now remember, they're calling them public shamings. A public shaming means that Brian Weaver and my family and government are saying that these things are crimes. Well, it's not a crime to fuck around with a paint gun, and it sure shit is not a crime to accidentally shoot your friend by the eye with a paint gun because you're this Brian Weaver person is sent after you since 8th grade with many others to rid you of the world, aren't even close to crimes. Is it a fucked up situation? Yeah, it's fucked up. Scared the shit out of me, and I can guarantee you it scared the shit out of Shane Weeks. Is it the end all be all of situations where people are hunted and killed over? No, absolutely not. They're everyday situations. Everyday situations. So the point I'm getting at is there's no margin, there's no room for error in my life on any level, and my life is a billion times how's it put? There's like a billion times you can't. There's no room for error. There's negative a billion times room for error. I could be the ultimate perfect robot. I'd still be hunted and killed by my family, police, and government. That's the point I'm trying to make. So anyways, hold on, I gotta see where I am on my notes with Brian Weaver here, because these are perfectly normal things that happen to people when they grow up, and they're not hunted by worldwide support over them. Let's see. Okay, I'm on. Ooh, too much heat. Okay. Bachelor Party 29, Brian Weaver. I think I talked about it. Joel. Oh, okay. Now, this seems to be a big one with less hints. Now, when I used to, in Calabasas High, we would eat at like the lower section. Like, we had our little clique and we eat it at the lower section. And there was like the main level by the cafeteria and all the benches. And then there were some steps down. And that's where our little clique, Brian Weaver, Joel Littman, Shane Weeks, me, Barry Verall, Deepak, Basu, Deepak. I believe Brian Weaver was playing creative bartender at my father's house. We'd always drink and play pool at my father's house on DeSoto and Woodland Hills because it was a party house. And I guess Brian Weaver, at least this is what he told me, he would like to piss in the drink and give it to Deepak. I can't tell you what's true or not, but what I can tell you is that when they made the movie The Big Lebowski, which has all sorts of parallels, they tried to play around my life and use things taken from my life and to send me hidden messages. The entire carpet pissing scene, which seems to stem from, I'm guessing, Brian Weaver pissing in Deepak's drink, but also Tom Hoke belligerently drunk one night at one of our parties, beating up the Texas Chainsaw Massacre poster, cardboard stand-up, and then later that night waking up and pissing on the corner of the carpet. They somehow, for some reason, were trying to allude that I'm like the dude and I'm a carpet pisser and all these weird tangents, whatever. I don't feel like breaking that movie down and going into it. There was a whole thing with my father and Persian rugs and Brian Longbottom taking pictures in Thousand Oaks of the Persian rug guy, getting in a whole dispute with him, whatever. I don't want to go there. But anyways, that was a little side tangent about Brian Weaver, just so you understand. Mr. Publicly Shame, Hunt Down and Kill pisses in people's drinks and then pins it on people, saying it's public shamings and things like that. Okay, so oh yeah, Scott Jelen. This is the one. Okay, first of all, Scott Jelen, I think, is a big topic, but I'm not 100% sure because I've never invested the time to know much about Scott Jelen. In high school, around 10th grade, like I said, we're sitting on this lower deck area, and by the way, one day a flying milk comes from the top and hits me in the head. I never really thought much about it back then, like people who were just fucking around, but I have a feeling now, looking back, that some of these smears and defamations led to that being personal, but that's not the biggest thing in the world, but it just sort of establishes a pattern of behavior that Kevin Perlman is not the bully. He's the one being bullied. He doesn't even know it, right? That's my point. So Scott Jelen, I can only recall this guy coming down to our area a couple of times. The only conversation I have ever had with Scott Jelen is like saying hi to him, right? I cannot even recall anyone bullying him, although if he was bullied, my guess it would be by Brian Weaver. But that's not where things get strange. So he came down a couple of things. I said hi. Never knew him. Was never friends with him. He came down a couple of times. Never came back. Most likely he was treated like shit by Brian Weaver. Can't tell you. And that's it. And I don't know much about Scott Jelen. He was, oh, that's right. Everyone called him Melonhead. I forgot about that. So everyone called Scott Jelen Melonhead. I don't know why. He was a big oafy guy. I never called him Melonhead. Although everyone called me Kid Taco after I bought the $369 Firebird. They look like this total Mexican piece of shit. And I put a 350 Chevy in it or something because I was about building cars. And I drove around to it. And I drove to school. And remember, when you're driving to Calabasas High, Rich Boy School, in a $300 old beater 69 Firebird with a red headliner, black paint, Bondo all over it, shit falling off everywhere, right? Holes in it. My friends are calling me Kid Taco, alluding that, I'm Mexican, right? And sorry to all the Mexicans out there or car builders, but I didn't choose Kid Taco. They decided to call me Kid Taco for building cars. That's not my fault. I'm suffering just as much as you, I guess. Not that it really bothered me too much, because stupid shit like that doesn't really bother me that much. But my point is that when my friends call me Kid Taco for building a cheap-ass piece of shit Firebird, people shouldn't be mad at me if they're going to be mad, which I can't imagine why they're mad. They should be mad at the people calling me it. But more importantly than that, they were also calling Brian Smith Bucky because of his fucked up teeth. And Bucky didn't seem to be mad about that. And once again, I didn't do it to Brian Smith. And I'm going to talk about Brian Smith and him moving away to later, and all the weird shit pinned on me from that. But that's for another topic. Melonhead. They called him Melonhead. I don't know. I think he was just a big oafy dude that everyone called Melonhead. And remember, I have a worldwide campaign to kill me for some reason, saying that I'm a bully and I need to be hunted and killed, which is beyond any level of strange. So trying to put those puzzle pieces together, well, it's impossible because I haven't done anything wrong, especially on that magnitude of killing people. And killing people, like I said, like killing like 100,000 people, because this is so huge and unheard of, that I can't fathom what the hell is about. But, so, you have to sort of look back and understand what's going on. So everyone was calling Scott Jelen Melonhead. I never called him that. I said hi to him once, and that was it. And I never really saw him again. Years later, after 29, after these public shaming comments, Joel Littman comes back in my life after I get into fish tanks, working some new angles with Brian Weaver, and he tells me about Scott Jelen, and he says that Scott Gillen, I think, hung himself naked or something like that. And so, obviously, because, I don't know, I'm guessing he hung himself because he was first of all, let me just say, I don't even know if this is true, okay? Like I said, I haven't done any research. This is coming from the lying pieces of shit that were in my life, but I'm just going to regurgitate from hearsay what they told me. The hearsay is, from Joel Littman, is that Scott Gillen was found naked, maybe masturbating or something, and he hung himself. Something like that. Okay, so Melonhead was found naked, masturbating, and hung himself. Now, one can derive from common sense that the kid was alienated, he didn't want to go on, and he killed himself. Now, with the amount of things being pinned on me, like my family with Paul Humphrey trying to make it look like I put Carissa Brands in mental institutions, my brother threatening my life that he and his friends are going to put me in a mental institution, Scott Gillen supposedly killing himself from alienation and hanging himself. I can't tell you if any of that's true because, like I said, I know nothing about Scott Gillen. I was never friends with Scott Gillen. I never really had any interactions with Scott Gillen except for saying hi to him once and knowing who he was and that people called him Melonhead. And that's all I really know. But what I can tell you is that at 29 years old, when Mike Huntley, after sending Rody Morales after me with the LAPD on all these setup attempts and frame job operations, and to pin murder people being killed on me while they were trying to get coerced false murder confessions from me, which is way the fuck out of the norm, and for no reason. While that's happening, I'm starting to find out what's going on, and Mike Huntley flipping into showing his true colors. One of the things he said to me was, "I've given you enough rope to hang yourself with." Now that could mean several things, right? He could be alluding to Scott Gillen hanging himself, if that's true. Uh-oh. Wait. Sorry, I think my camera made some noise and it sounded like it stopped recording, but I don't think it did. Hold on. No, it did. Okay, that could mean several things. That could mean Scott Gillen hanging on myself and they're coming after me for it. It could mean Melody the stripper Michael Huntley sent me over, which I was talking about. Brian Weaver telling me it's a public shaming. Wearing a rope in one of her dances, which I thought was pretty awesome, and me telling people about her wearing a rope. It could just mean, in a less literal form, that I gave you enough rope to hang yourself by having you bounce for strippers and then telling the world you're a horrible monster and we're going to kill you over it, which doesn't really make any sense because who the fuck would care if some 16-year-old bounced for a stripper at a bachelor party? That's not the type of things that worldwide groups get together and kill people over with psychological warfare, shaming, and murder operations, right? Okay. But, big but, on this note, and whether this is an actual accusation or just a psychological skullfuck tactic to collapse my brain and kill me or get that reaction to lock me away in jail cells, mental institutions, which they have proven over and over that they are doing. There was a porn star named Hunter Scott, and I can't tell you how deep or 100% if her naming was directed at me like a lot of the others. Chasey Lane, Mason Moore. My guess is that Taylor Wayne had to do with Wayne Thuna and Taylor, their neighbor, or maybe Taylor Amick. This just goes from person to person, okay? This isn't one random person. So it establishes a behavior or a pattern of terror tactics directed at me. So one of these porn stars' names in the 80s to 2000, name was Hunter Scott. And I believe that she was working with Mike Huntley and trying to send me hidden references about Scott Jelen, Hunter Scott, which later on changed her name to Bridget Monroe. And ironically, there is another porn star named Bridget B, who also has been working on me for years. But of course, remember, if I were to lay out a list of 1,000 porn stars, you would probably get 700 of those told to work on me with paranoid schizo tactics, right? So the point I'm making is I could literally point at almost anyone and they would probably be involved, which is pretty fucking disturbing. But I don't really have much proof on Hunter Scott. I think it started more of a hunch, but I think the more I started digging, the more defensive I saw people get. But I'm pretty sure that Hunter Scott, who changed her name to Bridget Monroe, was using that name, just like Chasey Lane, who was hinting about my 16-year-old building cars and driving around, there's so many. I mean, there's just so many. You get the idea, right? And so it's not that I suffer, it's not that I'm a schizo, they're actually doing it to send references to make me look like a schizo. One could say, let me back up, one could theoretically say that if you were famous, then people do those things. Example, Arnold Schwarzenegger says, "I'll be back" in a movie, and then everyone starts saying, "I'll be back" is perfectly normal, but there is a difference in the context of the situation. And the difference is that Arnold Schwarzenegger knows he's a famous actor. He's getting paid $50 to $100 million a year. He's selectively chosen the lifestyle while being given enough money to survive in the lifestyle. If you know where I'm getting at. Now let's take Kevin Perlman. He has a Twitter account. He has 10 followers. 8 of them are spam accounts and fake, which means he has maybe out of those 10 followers, 2 followers. And he starts making some jokes to 10 people, and the next day he sees people all over the world mimicking what he said, even watching the Olympics and watching people in the Olympics mimic it. And then he's told that I'm imagining it, I'm a schizo, yet every single person I'm in contact with worldwide is mimicking the things I said as if I was a famous actor, but then saying, I don't know you. Right? Well, right there, the only debate anyone could ever have is this or is this not happening? And because we all know it is happening, and because I have endless proof it is happening, undisputable, undeniable proof, that it all comes down to the same answer, that it's being done maliciously out of hate, anger, rage to end my life. And at no point will one person or anyone refuse to say that we're going to talk publicly about the situation how it is. We're going to sit there and hover over Kevin Perlman, trying to make him look crazy, to control him, torture him, kill him from one person to the next. Right? Showing the motive behind these operations. They are to kill me. Or eradicate me, or lock me away, or rid me of the world for some reason. Okay, so Bridget Monroe, Scott Jelen, hanging himself, Hunter Scott, it all comes down to the same, their little paranoid schizo things to try to tell everyone that I'm stalking strippers and hunting people down. And remember, I haven't mentioned much in this conversation. Actually, I haven't spoke much about this, and I will later, about the operations with Brian Longbotham and Victoria Walker. Or actually, I think I have. Rudy Morales, the frame jobs on the internet to make it look like I was stalking strippers at strip clubs and hunting them down to kill them or make them mentally ill or do something abusive or mean to them, none of which exist. Hence Hunter Scott or Mike Huntley, because they like to send people after me using their names as messages to try to turn me into a schizo. Like I said before, Michael Huntley was chosen with his name, if his name's even real, I'm not sure, to befriend me working there. Kevin can't see himself tactics, and Kevin hunts down and tries to kill people. That was the reason they wanted Mike Huntley to be my friend so bad at 14, if you get the idea. Aubrey Fisher, I'm fishing for information to use against you, and it just goes from person to person, things like that. And then people with the same names keep befriending me, so maybe the next 100 Michaels will hunt me to try to reinforce Michael Huntley with psychological warfare. Okay, so where are we? Scott Jellin. So I'm pretty sure with the Kevin's a horrible bully that needs to be hunted and killed, I'm pretty sure that what they're saying is that Kevin Perlman bullied Scott Jellin to death until he killed himself. Okay, to make a long story short, that is what they are pretty much telling the world, I believe. Okay, so where are we here with Brian? I think I actually finished my notes on Brian Weaver. Trust me, there's a lot more about Brian Weaver that he's involved in. But that's, I'm 46, and so looking back at 16, it's hard to pull a lot of the specific details, especially on the smaller things. But you can get an idea that this guy, Brian Weaver, coming in back in my life from 20 to 35 with Joel Littman, with how this is a public shaming, is all based on their cover-ups for the horrific things that they've done to me. And if you're saying that because I built cars and bought a big engine, or I bounced a couple of times for Melody the stripper, which I believe Mike Huntley is telling the world I cut her brake lines, you can understand that absolutely nothing has happened. Nobody gives a shit if some kid at 16 starts putting bigger engines in his Trans Am, which didn't even really get to that level, and nobody could care less if someone dates a stripper, or nobody cares less if someone bounces at a bachelor party at 16, and nobody could care less if someone draws a tree for their psychotic mommy with her art therapy degree that has dead leaves and a little skull or witch in the tree. Nobody could give a flying fuck, right? So my point is that what's really going on is lie after lie is being disseminated to the world to sabotage my life, just like I kissed a black girl at T1 or Sunny Skies Day Camp, and so therefore I'm a white supremacist that need to be hunted and killed by every community in the world, which then shifts to I'm a wife beater by every woman in the world. You get the idea, right? That my family with the police and government just decided we didn't like our child and we're going to hunt him and exterminate him. And I can guarantee you that Brian Weaver coming back into my life with Joel Littman while watching 100,000 to 1 million attacks per day, still going on today, are not someone teasing me or joking around or fucking with me in the way their friends fuck with people. These are actually murder operations. And to sit there and watch almost every person on the planet take turns on going in an angry rage and then claiming that I did all these things that aren't true are not things people do. Okay? And for my father to look me in the eye and tell me that I think differently and I don't know how the world works is the biggest lie and information defamation scam known to man to cover up murder operations from a father that puts shock collars on his dogs because he lacks every communication skill known to man. He does not have a concept of love. He does not have a concept of affection. He does not have a concept of having an animal or a person in his life that involves I want to be around you because I like you. He doesn't benefit from the warmth of another person. He is a controlling psychotic monster, and so for him, they're sociological, whatever. So he's a sociopath that the only thing he thrives from is power, right? I have you, I own you, I control you. You do what I say or I kill you. And for my father to say, you go out to dinner with me, and if you don't, I'll kill you, because I want to be around you, because you're my son, isn't about affection. It's not about love or affection or caring. Because someone who cares about someone wants the best for them. They want them to thrive. They want them to make money. They want them to be happy. They want them to have relationships and friends and a good life, right? So, when my father sits there and tells me he loves me while hiring Lorena Escobar to have me killed and telling 28 people alone in his office, all working together to have me killed for 14 years alone, working with a planet full of people to help, and finding out he sent Mike Huntley with the police and government after me to have me killed, or put bullet holes in his car, in his 300E Mercedes, telling the world I'm a danger to myself or others, who has tried to kill him or scare him, all linking back to me stopping my brother from terrorizing me, shows that he's in favor of people terrorizing me, and he's in favor of putting shock collars on his children to zap them every time he's having a bad day, right? In his hate and rage, right? If you get what I'm talking about. So you get the idea that while he's running around saying that I'm the abusive person who has done all these horrible things, and I'm full of rage, it's not me that's full of rage, it's them. I went around thinking they were the best people known to man until I found out what they were doing to my life and could put the puzzle pieces together, because nothing came directly from them. It all came from the side, like 100,000 raptors attacking you from all sides. You turn 29, you notice that 100,000 raptors are attacking you from all sides, and not one of them has any type of communication skills other than you're a dead man while grunting at you. And that's how it's been for 17 years / 40, finding out that I've been under all day and night 24/7 attacks since 5 years old of a family that just wants me dead and gone because they didn't like what they got. But trust me, anything the world's been told about me are complete polar opposites of the truth, because they have agendas. They're filled with anger and rage. They have agendas. The more I find out, the more they want me silenced. The more I know, the more I know, and the more I speak to people, the deeper the hole they've dug for themselves. And in their eyes, that truth cannot come out, and killing me seems to be their answer to the truth coming out with the police. That's where it gets really spooky, with the police and government. So we're not looking at local police departments paid off here. We're looking at billions of government dollars on federal levels to have me killed. While this obviously starts with the family trying to look like good, decent, credible people with their psychology degrees, stating that Kevin can't see himself and he's a horrible monster, just like the kid in the bad seed. Like I said before, it's complete fiction based on a family who doesn't like their child, and whether it's about control for them, it turns into killing me, or it's just about killing me. I can't tell you what specifically it is about out of their own mouths. All I can tell you is what I've witnessed, watched, the proof I've all the proof and evidence that I've put together, exposing these mass endless attacks, which really get bad for me at the point of finding out. I mean, that was my biggest crime at 29, finding out that they were fucking around with my life and destroying it. They were trying to prove that, they were trying to see what happens if they could put me into a state of paranoia, and if I would go out and try to kill someone or something like that. And like usual, the psychology community failed when it came to me, and each time they fail, they have to cover up their crimes of destroying my life with larger crimes, because they have never in 46 years been able to set me up. They have not been able to get me to hit women. They have not been able to get me to hit other people. They even got so desperate with Terrence Scroggins, who was contacted by Sean Dinsey to try to get these death threats, which kept threatening me and kept provoking me and kept trying to set me up, then trying to turn around and play victim. The common tactic my entire life done to me. They have failed on every level. Every single level. They have failed, and I can guarantee you that most human beings can't even take as much pain that I have taken, and most people would have actually broke instantly or eventually. Let me tell you, for 17 years, all day and night, 100,000 to a million attacks per day, still going on, all day and night, 24/7, non-stop, to try to get me to hurt someone, to set me up and remove me from society. They have failed, even with their bullshit fake arrests, right? They have failed on every level known to man, showing that this is the largest crime and cover-up operation in the history of the world to one person, inhumanity ever done to anyone at all, and they are guilty of things that are way worse than what Adolf Hitler did, way worse than slavery, you name it. They have set a whole new precedent of crimes against one man to torture and kill them in the history of humanity, and so that is one of the things they're trying to cover up, because they don't want the truth of what a horrific situation this really is, of a family actually trying to do things like hurt, harm, maim, create addiction, create substance abuse, create all these things to off their child, to lock them away in jail cells and mental institutions, then trying to cover up and go, they have a problem, and look, they're this and they're that and the other thing, right? So anyways, I'm drawing a blank about Brian Weaver, and this is probably a couple hours, so I'm going to stop this here. And if I have any thoughts about newer thoughts about Brian Weaver and some of his past events, I will then continue this, but this is probably pretty good for now, and I think this really kind of establishes the pattern of behavior between Brian Weaver, but also me discussing Brian Longbottom coming out of college, continuing these events, which never stopped throughout college or till now, to remove me from society or rid me of the world. Establishing a foundation of repetitive behaviors of people coming in my life and befriending me, trying to set me up, frame me, cry wolf, and then rid me of the world, no matter what it takes ever, any way, shape, or form, and then trying to cover up these entire operations by saying I'm a violent, paranoid schizo who's 5150 and is a danger to myself or others and needs to be removed from society. Hence, showing the original motive and original intentions starting at 5 years old. And remember, my family starts in on me at 5 years old. I'm a paranoid schizo and I have nervous behavior problems, or some more of their fantasy that they concoct based on imperfection. Anyways, so until next dialogue.